This is Little Willie. I know it's a brilliant name, and he is regarded as the very first tank. Hello everybody, my name is Adam, and today you're watching Warfare Explored. Today we're going to be talking about tanks from the First World War. Yes, that is Little Willie, and that is its name. It's mostly regarded as the first tank. Although it was just a prototype, it did prove useful for the British engineers in designing the Mark I tank for the British Army in late 1915. Now, speaking of the Mark I, this is the Mark I, and it had a name called Mother. It was called Mother or Big Willie. Yes, and that's what the British engineers came up with. Its high nose, as you can see there, meant it could climb across the trenches. It wasn't a very soft ride though, because it had it had no suspension, so you might have hurt yourself in there. And although I'm showing a picture of the Mark I, I'm going to talk about the Mark IV. Now, the Mark IV was the better version of the Mark I. It was the most produced. 1,220 were made, and it started production in 1917. It had thicker armour than the Mark I, and the sponsons on the side, the things which stick out, allowed it to go by train. They could retract in. Now, these tanks were split into two types of tanks, the male and the female. Yes, that's the picture I've decided to use for this part of the video. The female had, although the male had two 6-pounder guns. You can see them on the sponsons. There we go. And the female, I couldn't really find any pictures of those, but instead of the 1 6-pounder gun on each side, had two 303 Hotchkiss machine guns on each side. There's another picture of a male tank, and we should have a female tank coming up just about. There you go. There you can. I had to use somebody's model. I couldn't physically find a picture. Yes, you can see the machine guns there. The female was actually more effective than the male. Now we head over to France across the channel because they have designed the Renault FT17. Oh no, not that. That's easily confused. Yes, this small lightweight tank had a fully rotating turret, and with its rear engine design proved the basis for tanks for to this day, really. 3,000 were made. They only saw action in 1918, but when they did, they proved very effective indeed. It was probably the best French design of the First World War. Now we're moving on to another French tank design, the Schneider. Yes, there it is. The Schneider CA1. They were designed before the Renault in 1917, and they suffered heavy losses. They struggled to cross trenches. Luckily, they did see a lot of success in the large Allied assaults of 1918. It had a 75mm gun on the front, and then you can see it struggling to cross the trench. Indeed, and we'll go back to something like that in a second. Oh, wait, we're hopping back on that ferry and back to Dover, because we're going back to Blighty, because they've designed the Whippet tank now. This was a small lightweight tank, very similar to the Renault, but was designed to push through enemy lines, as the heavy tanks pounded the enemy lines with whatever they could, and these tanks would cause havoc behind the lines. And yeah, they proved were quite effective. It had a 303 Hotchkiss machine guns, same as the female tank, and this type of tank was explored much more in the Second World War. Now, I don't know why it's called the Whippet, but I've got another picture of it here, so enjoy. Yes, oh no. What is that? Oh god, it's the German's A7V. Oh, they built it 2 years late, and they only built 20 of them. Oh dear. This tank annoys me somewhat. It had a crew of 18, and had 6 machine guns down below, and the driver sat in the top square bit at the top, as you can see. It had twice the top speed of the Mark IV tank at 8 miles per hour. Oh, I'm reading my script, I've read it wrong. The Germans were reluctant to build tanks because they saw it as unmanly to sit in a metal box away from all the danger. Eventually they realised that, and yeah, what they needed at this point in the war was not this. They needed a miracle, and they were released 8 months before the end of the war, and really the German captured tanks, as you'll see now, 1, 2, 3, yes, like that one, were more effective than the Sturmpanzerwagen, the A7V. And they actually built factories dedicated to restoring Allied tanks they'd captured because they proved more effective than their own designs. In the Second World War, you'd obviously see that the Germans were much better with their tank designs. And the A7V was certainly a case of too little too late. And guess where we're going now? We're going even further east. So far east, we popped on a train to Mother Russia, and they've designed one tank for the war, the Tsar tank. Now, it's designed in 1914, and already you can see what a beauty it really is. It had two large wheels at the front designed to crush obstacles, and yeah, they did, but the small wheel at the back kept getting stuck. And I would tell you what its main gun was, but I don't know, and nobody knows. It for the duration of the war, the Russians mainly used Allied tanks, so the FT-17 and the Mark IV, and this was scrapped in 1923 on site. And yes, that's why it doesn't exist anymore. And now it's time for the conclusion. Yes, and so what I'd like to say is, what's this? The French are back with more tanks. They're for the Camon, I don't know how you pronounce that, and it first saw combat in 1917. It was similar to the Schneider with its pointy front to crush the obstacles. They built more of them first of all, and had a bigger gun at the front, which allowed it to do a lot more damage. But much like the Schneider, it struggled at crossing trenches. Which you'll see in a second of a picture of it struggling to cross a trench, and it didn't. A lot of 1917, it didn't do very well, and once again, like the Schneider, it did a lot better in 1918. And now, can we head on to the conclusion, please? Hopefully, the French will stop designing tanks. And well, all I have to say is the invention of the tank. Well, it really did change the way wars were fought, and really in keeping with the rest of the First World War. As you can see there, our poor A7V has got stuck in a trench. Yes, and obviously, if it wasn't for great British ingenuity, the tank would have never existed. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you subscribe, because then you can see much more warfare explored. Goodbye.